Chapter 11 of The House of a Thousand Candles. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The House of a Thousand Candles by Meredith Nicholson. Chapter 11. I Receive a Caller. Going to bed at 3 o'clock on a winter morning in a house whose ways are disquieting, after a duel in which you escaped whole only by sheer good luck, does not fit one for sleep. When I finally drew the covers over me, it was to lie and speculate upon the events of the night in connection with the history of the few weeks I had spent at Glenarm. Larry had suggested in New York that Pickering was playing some deep game, and I myself could not accept Pickering's statement that my grandfather's large fortune had proved to be a myth. If Pickering had not stolen or dissipated it, where was it concealed? Morgan was undoubtedly looking for something of value, or he would not risk his life in the business, and it was quite possible that he was employed by Pickering to search for hidden property. This idea took strong hold of me, the more readily, I fear, since I had been anxious to see evil in Pickering. There was, to be sure, the unknown alternative heir, but neither she nor Sister Theresa was, I imagined, a person capable of hiring an assassin to kill me. On reflection, I dismissed the idea of appealing to the county authorities, and I never regretted that resolution. The seat of Wabana County was 20 miles away. The processes of law were unfamiliar, and I wished to avoid publicity. Morgan might, of course, have been easily disposed of by an appeal to the Annandale constable, but now that I suspected Pickering of treachery, the caretaker's importance dwindled. I had waited all my life for a chance at Arthur Pickering, and in this affair I hoped to draw him into the open and settle with him. I slept presently, but woke at my usual hour, and after a tub felt ready for another day. Bates served me, as usual, a breakfast that gave a fair aspect to the morning. I was alert for any sign of perturbation in him, but I had already decided that I might as well look for emotion in a stone wall as in this placid, colorless serving man. I had no reason to suspect him of complicity in the night's affair, but I had no faith in him, and merely waited until he should throw himself more boldly into the game. By my plate next morning I found this note, written in a clear, bold woman's hand. The Sisters of St. Agatha trust that the intrusion upon his grounds by Miss Armstrong, one of their students, has caused Mr. Glenarm no annoyance. The Sisters beg that this infraction of their discipline will be overlooked, and they assure Mr. Glenarm that it will not recur. An unnecessary apology! The note paper was of the best quality. At the head of the page, St. Agatha's Annandale was embossed in purple. It was the first note I had received from a woman in a long time, and it gave me a pleasant emotion. One of the sisters I had seen beyond the wall undoubtedly wrote it, possibly Sister Theresa herself. A clever woman that, thoroughly capable of plucking money from guileless old gentlemen. Poor Olivia, born for freedom, but doomed to a pent-up existence with a lot of nuns. I resolved to send her a box of candy sometime, just to annoy her grim guardians. Then my own affairs claimed attention. "Bates," I asked, "do you know what Mr. Glenarm did with the plans for the house?" He started slightly. I should not have noticed it if I had not been keen for his answer. "No, sir. I can't put my hand upon them, sir." "That's all very well, Bates, but you didn't answer my question. Do you know where they are? I'll put my hand on them if you will kindly tell me where they are kept." "Mr. Glenarm, I fear very much that they have been destroyed. I tried to find them before you came, to tell you the whole truth, sir, but they must have been made way with." "That's very interesting, Bates. Will you kindly tell me whom you suspect of destroying them? The toast again, please." His hand shook as he passed the plate. "I hardly like to say, sir, when it's only a suspicion." "Of course I shouldn't ask you to incriminate yourself, but I'll have to insist on my question. It may have occurred to you, Bates, that I'm in a sense, mind you, the master here. Well, I should say, if you press me, that I fear Mr. Glenarm, your grandfather, burned the plans when he left here the last time. I hope you will pardon me, sir, for seeming to reflect upon him." "Reflect upon the devil! What was his idea, do you suppose?" "I think, sir, if you will pardon—" "Don't be so fussy," I snapped. "Damn your pardon, and go on." "He wanted you to study out the place for yourself, sir. It was dear to his heart, this house. He set his heart upon having you enjoy it." "I like the word. Go ahead." "And I suppose there are things about it he wished for you to learn for yourself." "You know them, of course. and are watching me to see when I'm hot or cold, like kids playing hide the handkerchief?" The fellow turned and faced me across the table. "Mr. Glenarm, as I hope God may be merciful to me in the Last Judgment, I don't know any more than you do." "You were here with Mr. Glenarm all the time he was building the house, but you never saw walls built that weren't what they appeared to be, or doors made that didn't lead anywhere?" I summoned all my irony and contempt for this arraignment. He lifted his hand, as though making an oath. "As God sees me, that is all true. I was here to care for the dead master's comfort, and not to spy on him." "And Morgan, your friend, what about him?" "I wish I knew, sir." "I wish to the devil you did," I said, and flung out of the room and into the library. At 11 o'clock I heard a pounding at the great front door, and Bates came to announce a caller, who was now audibly knocking the snow from his shoes in the outer hall. "The Reverend Paul Stoddard, sir." The chaplain of St. Agatha's was a big fellow, as I had remarked on the occasion of his interview with Olivia Gladys Armstrong by the wall. His light brown hair was close cut, his smooth-shaven face was bright with the freshness of youth. Here was a sturdy young apostle without frills, but with a vigorous grip that left my hand tingling. His voice was deep and musical, a voice that suggested sincerity and inspired confidence. "I'm afraid I haven't been neighborly, Mr. Glenarm. I was called away from home a few days after I heard of your arrival, and I have just got back. I blew in yesterday with the snowstorm." He folded his arms easily and looked at me with cheerful directness, as though politely interested in what manner of man I might be. "It was a fine storm. I got a great day out of it," I said. "An Indiana snowstorm is something I have never experienced before." "This is my second winter. I came out here because I wished to do some reading and thought I'd rather do it alone than in a university. Studious habits are rather forced on one out here, I should say. In my own case my course of reading is all cut out for me." He ran his eyes over the room. "The Glenarm collection is famous, the best in the country easily. Mr. Glenarm, your grandfather, was certainly an enthusiast. I met him several times. He was a trifle hard to meet," and the clergyman smiled. I felt rather uncomfortable, assuming that he probably knew I was undergoing discipline, and why my grandfather had so ordained it. The Reverend Paul Stoddard was so simple, unaffected, and manly a fellow that I shrank from the thought that I must appear to him an ungrateful blackguard whom my grandfather had marked with obloquy. "My grandfather had his whims, but he was a fine, generous-hearted old gentleman," I said. "Yes, in my few interviews with him he surprised me by the range of his knowledge. He was quite able to instruct me in curious branches of church history that had appealed to him." "You were here when he built the house, I suppose?" My visitor laughed cheerfully. "I was on my side of the barricade for a part of the time. You know there was a great deal of mystery about the building of this house. The country folk hereabouts can't quite get over it. They have a superstition that there's treasure buried somewhere on the place. You see, Mr. Glenarm wouldn't employ any local labor. The work was done by men he brought from afar. None of them, the villagers say, could speak English. They were all Greeks or Italians." "I've heard something of the kind," I remarked, feeling that here was a man who with a little cultivating might help me to solve some of my riddles. "You haven't been on our side of the wall yet? Well, I promise not to molest your hidden treasure if you'll be neighborly." "I fear there's a great joke involved in the hidden treasure," I replied. "I'm so busy staying at home to guard it that I have no time for social recreation." He looked at me quickly to see whether I was joking. His eyes were steady and earnest. The Reverend Paul Stoddard impressed me more and more agreeably. There was a suggestion of a quiet strength about him that drew me to him. "I suppose everyone around here thinks of nothing but that I'm at Glenarm to earn my inheritance. My residence here must look pretty sordid from the outside. Mr. Glenarm's will is a matter of record in the county, of course. But you are too hard on yourself. It's nobody's business if your grandfather wished to visit his whims on you. I should say, in my own case, that I don't consider it any of my business what you are here for. I didn't come over to annoy you or to pry into your affairs. I get lonely now and then, and thought I'd like to establish neighborly relations." "Thank you. I appreciate your coming very much." And my heart warmed under the manifest kindness of the man. "And I hope," he spoke for the first time with restraint, "I hope nothing may prevent your knowing Sister Theresa and Miss Devereux. They are interesting and charming, the only women about here of your own social status." My liking for him abated slightly. He might be a detective, representing the alternative heir for all